Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this virtual event with Book Passage. I want to thank Riverhead Books for making this conversation possible and for bringing these books into existence. One thing that we all realized in the pandemic, I think, is how independent bookstores like ours sort of have an audience that's and reach in the community that's beyond the one even that they're in. So I want to thank you all for joining wherever you are at and encourage you to look at bookpassage.com and see all the other events that we have coming up virtually with Eric Larson, Amy Tan, Isabel Allende, and an entire archive of these events that we've hosted over the years that is yours to peruse because they're an amazing resource, and we are so thrilled to be able to bring incredible authors like today's. We are thrilled to welcome Álvaro Enrigue. He is one of the most interesting and unique writers working in fiction today. He is a novelist, essayist, and short story writer. He's written 12 books out there, 2 of which we are fortunate enough to have in English, which is Una Lástima, that I hope is corrected very soon. Otherwise, we're all going to have to polish up our Spanish in order to be able to enjoy the rest of his work. But he had the stunning debut in English, Sudden Death, that I think took everyone just their breath away about what an inventive and incredible novel it was. And we are thrilled that he has followed up with You Dreamed of Empires, the book that we will be discussing here today, which is just an absolutely transporting, inventive, unique, wickedly funny dive into the meeting of Moctezuma and Hernan Cortez in 1519 in Tenochtitlan. So without further ado, I want to thank you for being here today, Álvaro. So thrilled to have you.
No, thank you for inviting me. The introductions are always very uncomfortable. Not only because they show that I have been living for so long now. 12 books sounds like a toll and doesn't sound very contained about everything, your generosity, etc. Thanks very much for having me. I have to say, that if there is people out there, we don't know, right? Or do you see the people?
I can't see the people.
I'm prone to incredibly bad jokes. No, I'm a dad. I'm the dad of 4, so I have been doing bad jokes for decades now, and I'm prone to that, and I don't know how to deal with with not measuring the effect in the audience. But we will see how we do, Avram. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we'll be all right. And I do want to encourage everyone who is watching, please feel free to put your questions that you might have for Álvaro in the comments in the chat on YouTube, and we will do our best to get to them later on in the conversation. So I wanted to ask, the seed of this incredible story is nestled in Sudden Death. It's one of the sort of chapters and episodes there. And I wanted you, and if you haven't read it, it's an amazing sort of book about Caravaggio and Quevedo playing tennis, pala corta together. But it features a little bit of this sort of intersection of Moctezuma and Cortez. How did you know that you wanted to take these characters and revisit them in a book? And how was it different when you encountered them this time?
No, I like more the second part of the question, and Avram, you will have to tell me from time to time stop because I get nervous and I can speak for hours. Because the more nervous I get, the more I speak. So I will try to control myself. But I am not the kind of writer that knows on Monday what will be written on Tuesday. And I am not very good at planning anything, including the books that I'm reading. So when I wrote Sudden Death, certainly I didn't know that I was going to write this book that happened long ago, and in the middle there was an enormous novel that will come out in English in the near future, but I still don't know when. It's the translation is ready, but we are deciding what is the proper date for bringing it out. So so there was not a relation between these two books. What was surprising in Sudden Death was the apparition of Hernán Cortés and Moctezuma. That is not that I work with a plan, but it really was something that happened one day, and that it's explained by the context. I wrote that novel, or most of that novel, with the best fellowship in the universe, that is the Kuhlman Center Fellowship, which is that for a year they pay you a salary, and you just go there and you can write novels, but you can read all the books you want, no? And that's what I mainly did. And while I was working there, asking for random books that would materialize in my desk in question of minutes, I discovered that there was a relationship between one of my characters, that is Francisco de Quevedo, and the descendants of Hernán Cortés. So Hernán Cortés came into the novel in a very unexpected way for me. But in general, everything is unexpected for me. What I'm writing, when I'm writing, I think that not having a method is also a method. So I wrote that way, and this second novel, in which the characters reappear, responds to a completely different set of stimuli. That is that while I was putting together information for another book that by the way, I have not begun. By now, I keep putting together information. The 500 years of the fall of Tenochtitlan came out, and the discovery, and even when I believe that is the beginning of modernity, the moment in which the Spanish Empire is forced to design a real functional colonial world in a situation in which this empire is dealing with really complex societies that you can defeat in war, or more than anything, you have to negotiate everything to make the system work. I think that's the very beginning of modernity. It's the moment in which modern cities are invented. It's the moment in which world commerce begins. Many things happen in that moment. So I was thinking about all of that because there was this enormous polemic in Mexico going on, and I began to write a book in which I could laugh for a few pages. It was not going to be a long book about Diego Rivera. Imagine that, of all people, of Diego Rivera, and something was going to happen with Diego Rivera, who was, as everybody in his period, was a tremendous hypocrite, and was like
outsized.
yeah, an outside hypocrite, and he would be like painting these murals in which he denounced the Spanish oppression of the indigenous people, while in his house there was a lot of indigenous people serving. So it was a short story. In fact, it was a very short little thing. And when I began to work with that, the idea of writing about what in the beginning was going to be just a scene for Diego Rivera to dream about became a whole novel. So it was very unexpected, and in that sense, and it's only now that I'm beginning to answer your question, the setup, what is common between the characters in Sudden Death and the ones in this novel is just the names, really. They are not at all the same characters. I have the impression that the Hernán Cortés of Sudden Death was closer to the real historical figure. I think that this Hernán Cortés is very fiction-like, and yeah, that. No, but the first time I did the connection between the two books was when someone asked me about it. I never even thought that I was returning to a subject.
There's an odd quality to the Hernan Cortez in this book that's almost like I have this image sort of like a pull where everything's swirling around him, and he's almost not reactive in a way in this this book. And it's interesting to me, that idea. I wanted to ask you, because you focus on these moments when sort of history is decided at the meeting of two individuals, or I think about the Council of Trent in your last book. And like, do you believe in the agency of these individuals, or do you think it's just sort of a force of history and it just kind of collides them?
But that's a question that has to be answered in two different ways by the professor and by the writer. No, as the professor, I think in hyperstructures colliding. No? And I am completely sure. I don't know if we should be talking about this, but it doesn't matter. I'm completely sure that Tenochtitlan was going to fall. You know, it was unavoidable. No, Europe had the means to begin an occupation in 1521 or in 1525, but the amount of people in Europe and the amount of people in the Americas explains almost everything. No, there are all these historical things. No, that by the way are not related at all to guns. And to hold, no, it's not that. It's different things. It's germs for sure.
Right.
But I think that it has to do, and this is an opinion that makes me very unpopular, with the true arm of massive destruction that the Europeans brought to the Americas, that are books. And I know we all love books. I love, all I do is reading books, but at the same time, the colonization happened mainly in the level of the imagination and in the level of language. No? The pre-Hispanic world looked pre-Hispanic until the 18th century, but the great difference was that there were books and some knowledge was important and some knowledge was dismissed because it was not in books. But that's an Earth's opinion. No? In a novel, of course, what matters is the characters, or what matters for me. No, it's again a procedural thing. What I do is rise characters, and as a writer, that is the motive I use to keep the story moving. I am not. I think that by now it's clear in English also. No, I am not a plot-driven author, even when in this, no, at least in this novel, there is a very clear plot. There is a very clear plot. But with what I work is with idiosyncrasies, because I write these novels about the past to criticize the present. No, I don't expect anyone to think that what I'm writing about is happened in history. I think that if you read a Wikipedia page, you will see that it was not that way. But what matters to me is the contemporary world and how the heritage of those moments, it's still alive in so many of our prejudices, of course, but also in many beautiful things we do, like eating, like sharing conversations, like using language, etc.
Yeah, I was thinking about that idea, like how much of this was a correction, and I remember reading years and years ago now a piece of yours in the London Review of Books, and it was about Calderon's war on the cartels, and I remember how at the time how misapprehended that was in the United States, where there was this kind of like, oh, he's finally cleaning up the war, against the cartels in the dangerous parts of Mexico. And when in fact, it's this political bid that makes everything more dangerous and more hostile. And how much of that is part of what you do, of the kind of voice of using fiction to call out what is the real?
Well, I think, Avram, I think that you will agree with me that everything we write is political always. No, I don't want to like show up like a contemporary writer with political preoccupations that wants to save the world. I'm no superhero, and I don't believe like Julio Cortázar did, that you can change the world through literature. I think that was a very innocent idea, but I think that it's impossible not to bring our politics to our writing, and I don't think that makes writers peculiar. I think that if I read anyone's supermarket list, I will know for whom they vote, at least in November. But it will be incredibly clear and that's the handwriting done in the kitchen when the children are around, etc. So those political constructions are unavoidable. I love the word that you use, that is correction. No, can a book cannot save the world for sure, cannot change it, and the best that a book can do is maybe switch your point of view from one to another. But I think that that is a correction big enough, not to. Is not. I insist that I have a political program at all when I am writing a book, but I certainly live with impatience about how the past of the Americas is read. Just because I know about it, just because I've been reading about it all my life, just because that's what I teach, just because it's a passion of all of my life. So I get impatient about the misinterpretations of the past of the Americans, and then as all Mexicans in the US, I'm more Mexican than the Mexicans that are in Mexico. So that happens with us expatriates and migrants, and in that sense, I have this like feeling that I should be saying things, you know, that that brings some clarity about things that are not that clear for a common reader in the US or even in Mexico. This book was written previously in Spanish, and it appeared in Mexico almost as the same book. It changed a little bit in English, but not that much. Not as much as Sudden Death, that is really longer in English.
Tell me a little bit, because I know you do a lot of archival work, and you've sort of mentioned these things that you're reading about for years, and diving into libraries and collections and all of that. How do you feel about the way that when you choose to kind of cleave to the historical knowledge, and how much that's a springboard for the creativity, or how much sometimes that could hem in an idea of being faithful to some kind of record?
I think that, and I have this answer organized because it's a question that I receive regularly.
I imagine you do.
It's not that I think about it when I'm writing. I think that, at least for me, writing fiction is a very instinctive thing. I just follow the bad jokes. That's what I do, and I just let my anger, my political anger, flourish, and I just let desire rule.
Mm.
And in that sense, I can tell you that I don't, I do a lot of like a crazy amount of archival information, maybe just because I'm a very insecure person. So I feel that I have to know the classical example is the Roman soldier sandal. If you want to write about Jesus of Nazareth, you have to know how a Roman soldier tied their sandals. Even when the sandals of a soldier of a centurion will never show in the novel, you have to know that. And then I just I really enjoy my work. It's a criticism that I receive in England, and I have received in Mexico since I was a very young writer.
Taking too much pleasure?
Seems to be enjoying too much to write their books, which is a criticism that I celebrate. No, yes, I do. I certainly do. I do many other things in my life. As all writers, I have had a trillion jobs. So when I'm writing, I'm just in a state of expansion and happiness that may be reflected in the books. So I don't serve any program when I'm writing a book. There is this, of course, political structures that are acting there all the time, because that's how any writer looks at the world. But in general, I write with freedom. I'm not worried about offending my family. I'm not worried about offending my friends, and I am not worried about offending history either. If history, once something is in a novel, it serves the novel. So if it's not true, well, it's a novel. It really doesn't matter. But that has to do with the fact that I think that the novel is the space of desire. The novel is a space of joy for me. I perceive it like a game. When I'm writing a novel, I'm really playing. So there are rules in the game, but those rules are not the rules of history, are not the rules of academic research. They are not the rules of anything else than a novel. In one of my previous books, the one I was talking about you, there are characters that have the names of my children. But in the moment in which they entered the novel, they became a completely different thing because it's just a function to make the book work, not a representation of my poor son or daughter. No, it becomes a completely different thing. So I am not very respectful of the research that I do very respectfully, let's say, even though at least in this novel and in Sudden Death that you read also, there is a very serious loyalty to what we know about how things really were in that period, no? Which means that as if you read the book, that I think that obviously you did, you know that what happens in the book didn't happen in history for sure. Nevertheless, the way they ate, the way they sit down, the way the chairs are designed, the smells, the views of the city, etc., are as loyal to reality as they can be in this moment in history. No, in 20 more years, we will know much more about Tenochtitlan. But I really use all the knowledge I could reach about the context in which the novel happens. For the little things, the big things, it's fiction.
But those little armatures, I think, make it so transporting. I mean, I know that I think that the city of Tenochtitlan is like another character, I think, in this book, and it's so rendered, and you feel like you are so very much there. That I remember I was one night I was halfway through the book, and I gripped out my phone and I was like looking for renderings of what it was, the pre how the city looked or whatever, and these drawings that archaeologists and people put together come up, and I'm like, no, this isn't vivid enough. This isn't what I have going on in my head, thanks to Álvaro.
Well, and it's a living subject also, Avram, which is I think fantastic. No, when I had the novel finished, I had a last trip before turning it to the publisher in Spanish to Mexico City, and I had the incredible good luck of connecting with the chief archaeologist of Mexico City, and he had the absurd generosity of taking me to see the new discoveries in the city that are still not put out. No? And this happened because he had a lot of work. He was not answering my emails and calls. and so I sent him the novel. No, at the end it was like, man, I just, this is the novel. No, you can see that I'm serious. There is a whole book here, and I read the same books that you read. No? So if you can just give me a hand, because I wanted to see a little thing about the last parts of the palace where the Spaniards stayed were discovered recently. So I wanted to see that. So I write to him. He doesn't answer. I send the novel. He doesn't answer. And one day before I return to Mexico City or two, he answers back and says, I read your novel and you have everything wrong. All your plan of the city is wrong. And I'm like, but I follow all the maps. And he says, yes, but now we have the buildings. now we have much more than when those maps were done. No?
Maps have changed.
And he took me to visit the recent excavations, and that was, of course, 6 months more of working in the novel.
Revision.
Yes, because I had to change this walk that Jazmín Caldera does through the city, had to be completely reorganized because the recent discoveries show that the maps that we had were not useful anymore. So, and I just love that you say that the city is a character, because I will contradict myself. It is true that I don't have a project when I begin a book, but certainly I wanted to play with the idea of bringing Tenochtitlan to life, because I think that it was such a wonderful thing, such an amazing city. And and if I was able to plant that in your head, I'm happy. I'm the happiest man in the world. That was it.
It worked for me. I'm curious about that thing because there's this, you bring it to life, and there's this respect. I mean, and the imagery of the costumes that they're wearing, and this just kind of almost like Atlantis-like city. But at the same time, I think there's this colonial fantasy that we have about like the prelapsarian indigenous world, where we go, everything is so, everything was perfect and in balance and in harmony with nature. And I think one point that I remember you make in this book is about that this was the meeting of two very violent, warlike societies. And there isn't this there is a great respect for what we've lost and the spirituality and all that, but there's also a realness about maybe what that it wasn't a total utopia.
Well, if you have traveled to Mexico City, Avram, you know that the moment you get into the taxi in the airport, the first question will be who you are with Cortés of Moctezuma. It's a living wound in Mexico. It's such a living wound that what is weird for me is that the Americans have decided to forget about that world and live in this continent as if there was this mythical past, but as if that past was not traumatic at all. And I think it is. And I think that it explains many things. In Mexico, that historical trauma is a never-ending discussion. So for me, it was very important to try to represent things as I believe they were. It's not that I'm being arrogant enough to say that I think that they were that's how they were, but there is I think that the Eurocentrist point of view is as ridiculous, and that's the word that I will use, ridiculous, as the Diego Rivera point of view. Also, so I was all the time trying to balance this, like encounter, because I don't know. I'm very happy that we are not subjects of the King of Spain anymore, but I am very happy also that my children will not go to war and be sacrificed in a temple. So it's yeah. I try to have a balance all the time. I think that because of my formation, because I'm a Mexican in the US, that is a very European culture-oriented country, etc. I'm very partial to the indigenous cultures of the past of Mexico, and of course the contemporary ones, that are there and are alive, and the languages are spoken and the rituals are done. Is the European invasion was really never finished. It was impossible to kill the soul of the continent, and it didn't happen. But nevertheless, I'm partial to the indigenous past. Now, I think that it's obvious in the novel that I think that the indigenous people is much more glamorous, not much more handsome.
Definitely.
The food is so much better.
Stinking. Oh, yeah. Fools, these clowns that show up. Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about drugs in the novel. We can.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Well,
it's a whole
it's a psychedelic novel also.
Hallucinatory, thread to this. Where did that emerge from? And because I think it is very central.
Well, there is I always say the same thing. Well, there are many parts to this answer, but there is one side to it, that the use of psychotropics that was regulated and it formed part of rituals and it was part of the societies was not recreative in the Mexica world, and was very important, in religious terms, and I think that there are things that are kind of proved in the archaeology books and the history books, that there are many things that you cannot understand about the Mexica world if you don't think that these rituals were done with everybody to a certain degree using hallucinogenics. And then there are things that a novelist can say, but an historian can't because we don't have the tools to say it. That is like, for example, if you see the codexes that the Mexica produced, and you imagine to see them in magic mushrooms, I think that you will be closer to the experience that the people was looking for. These were not books, they were films. Those things
Yeah, they're moving.
that came out of the book, and yeah, but that's the imagination of the novelist. Certainly all these ceremonies that are so famed in European culture, in which the priests would go up to the temple and make a sacrifice, etc., which was not as frequent as historians says, are impossible to understand in their fair measure if you don't consider that part of the ritual was that everybody was a little bit high, or maybe very high, beginning with the person that was going to be suffering, more that person.
They were the most high.
Everybody was high. Everybody was high. And I think that we have a lot of clarity about that, archaeological clarity and historical clarity about that. But by other hand, well, it's a novel, no, and it's fun to the novels. It's never a good idea to speak to the novelist, because the novelist sees the reality as a series, the novel as a series of functions, not characters, but functions, not subplots, but functions. And the tempo of the novel, and I had that very clear since the beginning of the book, was the time that Moctezuma took to become super high to arrive to his encounter with Hernan Cortés, like completely out of it. So the pass of time in the novel is measured in the amount of magic mushrooms and another magical substance that Moctezuma is consuming in order to find knowledge. No, that was again the use of these substances. This is not a history and anthropology seminary, and I could not teach one of those either. No, I can teach about the literature produced in that time, not about the history. Nevertheless, it's very clear that that hallucinatory substances were used to find wisdom, because differently than the Europeans, the people from the Americas used it to think, and the people of central Mexico for sure used it to think, that the gods were here. No, it's just that you could not see them, but if you did the proper ritual, that was dancing for 24 hours, that is still done in places like the Virgin of Guadalupe Temple, or consuming certain substances, you could have your vision would open to the sacred world. The same thing happened, of course. I don't remember if that's in the novel or not, but with chili. When you eat something that is very hot, you get high. It's a different kind of highness, but you get high. You love your friends much more if everybody is like, and affection moves in a different way, and some senses open more than others. And it's certainly, we're very sure in historical terms that chili was related to the consumption of chili was related to religious rituals. So that little everyday experience can be like amplified in a novel, because novels are always very exaggerated.
I love that kind of that openness to kind of what centrally comes in. And is that how a T-Rex song kind of, I don't want to give away anything for anybody who hasn't read it, but is that how that slips into this narrative?
That's a question about procedure. It's great that we're doing it here, because I can show the sofa and the dog and everything, but when I'm writing in this place, when I'm sitting down, I write for a few hours. I write by hand in the beginning, and because I have a bad back, every hour or so I stand up and put a record there. There is a record player there. There is Juarez the cat sitting down. So, and many times he's a record that dignifies me because he's like Mahler, and many times he's a Juan Gabriel record that I sing crying, thinking in the past. No, it doesn't matter. So when Montezuma visits the temple, I put the Electric Warrior of T-Rex, that is an extraordinary record, and I enjoyed it a lot. And I had an illumination there. No, there is a connection between Mark Bolan and Montezuma. No, the bare chest, the feathers, no, the absolute glamour, the hair. So it was unavoidable that Moctezuma would shake his royal butt to the rhythm of T-Rex. It's just
Get out of
mad.
the way of that.
But this, again, is this instinct of having fun while you write that may not be that good for selling books or for
Oh, wow.
cultivating readers. I don't know. But it's again this like urgency to write with absolute freedom. If in the novel, once it was written, it was very clear for me that Moctezuma had to listen to T-Rex, to a T-Rex song in a moment of the novel. So the freedom to do that, no, is just a gift of a novelist.
Is that freedom something that's been consistent for you in your career, or is it something that you feel has grown more open-ended and more inclusive?
No, I always had other jobs, so I have always written whatever I want. No, I don't think that it has grown up or diminished. No, because there are all these scandals now. Writers are censoring themselves now because they fear things. I don't know any writer that would self-censor to
You're a
because
college
there's
professor too, so those are frauds.
yes, some forces of somewhere attacking them. No, I don't think so. I think that it's at the end a very private conversation between a person who writes and a person who reads. That reads and that conversation sometimes flies and sometimes not. No, but I think that all of my life I have said exactly what I wanted to say. I don't, maybe I could do well controlling a little bit, no, but I don't think so. No, I just enjoy it.
I want to get about this idea of the conversation between the reader and you, because I know you've said in other interviews about this idea that the reader in some ways is the artist. The reader is the one that's filling in all the pieces, and this negative space in the novel gives them the space to get in there and kind of animate the thing. How much are you thinking about what you're maybe not saying in order to provide that space? Or do you go into these, you said that this was going to be a very short book about Diego Rivera, maybe a story, and then it, it's bigger. Are you thinking about kind of keeping things a certain, like limited in a certain way in order to provide that space?
No. It's just I can say that, and I still think that it's maybe I have changed positions in everything in my life except in that. I still think that the reader is the artist and not the writer, but I think that that's due to the, and no one had ever asked me that, and I think that due to the disproportion between the book that you think that you will write and the tiny little thing that comes out, like the so pale thing that comes at the end. I'm sure that everybody has that experience. No, if my books were as I imagined them, oh my God,
Volumes.
I could be Cervantes. Yeah, so I think that comes from our vulnerabilities and failures to generate the words that sounds kind of sentimental, the scenes and the political landscapes that we are trying to produce, or that I am not the Pope, that I am trying to produce when I write a book. No, behind you read my book, and behind my book is your imagination really creating that world. In my case, I read my book and it's this very pale thing because behind it is the book that I really wanted to write, but it's impossible to write. There is no time to write. I will never have enough time to research, et cetera, et cetera. And there is the problem that books end, right? I never, the day in which I finish a book, I never knew that I was going to finish it. And many times I have kept working. In sudden death, it was very obvious. I kept working, and like 2 or 3 weeks after, and I don't know, 10 pages more or 20 pages more, it was like, no, this book is done long ago. No, I need to return. And the day in which I cried, that's when I have to stop. So, but that is part of that. No, we have this tremendous problem that comes from the Judeo-Christian tradition, that is the sacrality of the word, no, or maybe the Greek tradition, the Platonic tradition. I don't know, but this idea of that words are the representation of God in the world, which of course is the coolest idea and explains everything, and we owe so much literature and great art to it. But at the same time, we have the feeling that a work of literature is a sacred thing, and it's not. No, it's always a contingent thing that depends on if your coffee was the coffee was good for the writer that day, if the children slept. Jose Emilio Pacheco used to say that a writer could never write the same page in 2 different days, and it's always contextual. And those necessary and impossible to avoid defects of literature, I think that produce the real miracle of literature. That is that in your head, the novel happens. There is this beautiful story that Jorge Luis Borges used to tell. Now I am not completely sure that is Borges, but I think that is Jorge Luis Borges, that when he was a child and he would see his father reading, once his father went to bed, he would grab the book and shake it, so the next day it would be a different book. So the words would get
rearrange it.
Rearrange. There's something about it in writing. No, it's a very chaotic system that at the end comes together through the miracle of character generation, of plot drive, of the like discovery of a voice and a rhythm that story needed, and that at the end miraculously flourishes in the head of someone who I don't know that is you. It's just unbelievable. It's a miracle, and it's always a conversation between 2 persons in different contexts.
There is something miraculous about it. You write in the same space with your wife, who's also a novelist, right? Valeria Luiselli?
Well, that's my ex-wife.
Oh, your ex-wife. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. But no, don't worry. I'm still the president of the fan club, so it's fine. Yeah, we wrote in the same space for 10 years, the 10 years in which we were together. But well, after the pandemic, I think that everybody learned to work with their couples, right? To share the spaces, and the ways in which we work have changed, right? I use it to exchange being the staying dad at home, the staying figure at home, the one who take care of food and school and homework, etc., for the few hours I had in the morning alone at home to write. And now that category doesn't exist anymore because the office time has become much more flexible. My today wife, I divorced from Valeria many years ago. She's a curator, that is a person that usually would be in an office, and the truth is that she spends a lot of time here. Maybe is due to that to living with Valeria, who was a writer too, and we were sharing spaces because no writer is rich. And yeah, that's a real. Well, there are a few, but you need to be. It's statistically impossible to make money with a book. that I'm used to working like coffee shops, and Sudden Death is mainly written well between the New York Public Library and the what's the name of this coffee, the Hungarian pastry shop in just behind Columbia, because I was teaching in Columbia in that time. But I go to write there. I write a lot in the public library, but the final version of the novel I do here, not in perfect conditions. No, there is always, or my wife working and having meetings with incredibly important artists, or the children doing a mess, or the cat doing what the cat does, or the dog doing what the dog does. No, I'm a dad, so
You catch
I'm
your
very
moments when
flexible.
you can.
Yeah. When I can go to the coffee shop, I'm happy. And I usually divide the handwriting of the book I do out of home, because I can take a notebook. It's easier to take a notebook to the library than taking a computer. And the final version I do here in the studio, dealing with a different reality. It's not that in the Hungarian coffee shop I have silence. So no, it's much worse than here.
I want to, with the little time we have left, I want to encourage, if anybody has any questions, please put them into the chat on YouTube, and we can put them forward. Do you work on just one book at a time, or are you somebody that has multiple projects going amongst your life of teaching and dogs and cats and the rest, children?
Yeah, I think that I have enough things in the table. I don't know. I have never thought about it. Now I am in that disjunctive. If I should finish the book that I'm doing, that is a non-fiction book, or should I begin a new novel? I had a baby 18, 19 months ago, and
it's amazing you're doing anything.
No, I'm not doing anything. That was what I was going to tell you. I really like to be what I really enjoy is the family things. It's sentimental and silly, but it's real. So when I finish you Dream of Empires, the baby was about to be born, and I was like, I will not write until he's 2, and he's about to be 2 this summer. So I'm thinking that I should begin a novel, but I really don't know. I usually, when I finish a book, normally I'm already beginning a book, or I did that all my life. In the later years, it has been less chaotic. I think that when I was a younger writer, I needed to prove to myself that I was a writer. So I was writing all the time. And I was like going to all the festivals and doing all the things that a writer should do. And now I am not that person at all. I don't need to be writing to be happy, even when I am happier when I'm writing, no, because I enjoy it. And the same thing with the public life of a writer. No, I'm sorry to tell you, but I was forced to do this by the publicist.
I was twisted by the publisher.
It's not true. No, it's not true. No, it's not true by any means. But yeah, I'm happier with right now. I'm happy just taking care of the baby. Now, when we finish, I will run to the daycare, and then to the park, and the usual way we'll cook, the usual routine.
That's beautiful. Well, maybe that's a great place for us to stop and let you.
There were no questions. Maybe there was no one, Avram. Maybe there was no one.
The silent room.
And yes, exactly. Maybe it was only us.
It's been a pleasure.
It has happened to me. Once I had a reading in the bookstore in the NYU bookstore. I was with another writer, but I will not say the name. I don't find those stories shameful, but there's people who do, so I won't say the other name. But we had this reading in the NYU bookstore, and 2 days before the reading, now I will forget all the names. Bernie Sanders announced that he was doing a meeting with the students in the park in front of the bookstore.
Oh, yes.
So the NYU people had prepared this like enormous hall with an incredible amount of chairs, and there was cheese, and there was grapes, and there was wine, and there was the other author, myself, and one of my children. So we just ate the grapes and left sadly because there was no way we could get into the Bernie Sanders meeting. So maybe that happened to us today, and another day in Monterrey, in the book fair of Monterrey, it was like a little panel. It was 3 writers, and the audience was one person who was nicknamed the audience because it was only one guy. So we went to a coffee shop. So it happens all the time.
It does happen. I remember we had Carlos Ruiz Zafón, and it was right when I think one of the first novels was translated into English, and he came and toured the store, and no one showed up. And then the book exploded, and it's New York Times bestseller and all these things, and people are calling the store and going, "Are you gonna get him to come and be there?"
I was going to tell you that, no? He sold like millions and millions of copies, no? I liked him, no, because he was like a non-writer, no? He didn't, none of the stereotypes of the writer type
and not part of
applied
the
to him. Yeah, he was like like an LA guy in tennis shoes. No, he didn't care about anything. I love that.
Beautiful. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Álvaro, for being here. This has been an absolute pleasure. Even if it was just us, I don't think it was. I think we've got demure lurkers out there.
We will never know, and that is that's extraordinary. We will never know. Thanks very much for this very generous conversation.
Thank you so much. And if you are out there, please buy the book. Do yourself a favor. It is so much fun. Just an incredible ride, and it has been wonderful to have you here today, Álvaro. Thank you.
Thank you.